It's a tax deduction for anyone who owns real estate. Besides for your primary residence, you can take a depreciation deduction, or you can do this cost segregation thing and accelerate those deductions. Essentially, it's a cash flow mechanism that allows you to have more money to invest.
If you're a residential real estate agent earning $200,000 a year and you want to grow your passive income, this show's for you. Learn the secrets other agents use and hear from experts in our field in order to guide you along your journey to investing in assets like apartment communities so that you can turn your commissions into cash flow. I'm Randall McLeod. Let's go, baby. All right, welcome back. This is Randall McLeod. I'm the host with Agents Building Cash Flow. So excited to have you today. And my guest, I've been trying to chat with him and get to know him better over time, just because he's the monster in the space that knows cost segregation better than anybody. And so I'm really happy to have him on the show today. Yonah Weiss, he works for Madison SPECS. They're the national cost segregation leader. We're going to dive into that, talk about what a cost segregation is, how it pertains to you, and what you're going to get out of having one done on an investment or a property that you buy. And we talk about social media because he is a content king. I mean, he's putting out a ton of content, and I love the fact that he is a value first sort of guy. Like, he's going to provide value over and over and over again without ever asking for anything in return. And so without further ado, let's bring him on and he can speak for himself on all these subjects. Let's go. I am excited, man, to have you on the show today. I've been listening to your pod, listening to the content that you put out, and seeing all the stuff on Weiss Advice. Without further ado, I want to welcome Yonah Weiss to the show. Thanks for jumping on.
My pleasure, Randall. Great to be here. It's a pleasure to speak with you today.
Awesome. So congrats on 300 episodes on Weiss Advice, right? I was on there. And so obviously that's a ton of conversations that you've had with industry leaders, people that we probably both know and provide a lot of content. So having done that many episodes, what has been like one or two of the most impactful things that you've learned through all those conversations?
So it's hard to pinpoint one or two things that I've learned. You know, every single episode, each guest that I have on there is, you're absolutely right, industry leaders, people who are, in my eyes, successful people that I know. One of the things that I love the most about the podcast is I only have guests, people that I already know. So it's just kind of allowing me to further build that relationship with those people. But I will share with you one thing. We did this 300 episode thing this week, and it was a really big, it brought back a bunch of old guests, and everyone shared an idea or a piece of advice. And we did the same thing when we hit the 200 episode. And I'm just going to share one piece of advice that someone shared on that 200th episode, because that's something that like has stuck with me more than anything else. So there's so much I've learned from the podcast in general, and like about, you know, the relationships and about, you know, learning about every industry asset class there is in real estate. But this one specific thing stuck out, you know, just jumped out at me and resonated with me more than any other like nugget that I've ever heard.
I love it. All right. I got my pad out, man. I'm ready.
Get your pad out now. Everyone take notes, right? Hit the record button.
That's right.
And this was Steve Libman, who's the founder of Integrity Holdings, a real estate private equity company. And he said, people who say that money doesn't buy happiness have not given enough away yet. Let that sink in there. Because basically what he's saying is that by making more money, you're essentially able to give away more money, right? The more wealth you create, the more you can actually help more people. And the joy that comes from truly helping other people it's uncomparable to almost anything else in this world. And to me, that really is like my foundation, like what I'm all about, like my whole being, my whole essence is surrounded. So when I heard those words from someone else, it just, to me, that lit me up. So you asked what was one thing, that would have to be it.
That's solid. And I know Libman well. We were in another group a while back, and then I saw him at a few events. And I mean, right now, I think they have their like nonprofit meetup right now, right? It's happening. And so, yeah, seeing how they operate and what they do, it is certainly inspiration. So shout out to Libman and all his crew over there, Travis and group, you know. Yeah, solid. Love it. Starting off with like a gold nugget just out of the gate. Beautiful. So, you know, I always like to start, just kind of get something like that, get a question out so that there's some kind of, you know, like value added early on in a conversation. But one thing that I love about this podcast format as well is that I can have a conversation. I can get to know you better. So you're kind of speaking to that point. And so tell me how you got into the space, man. Like, how did you even get going into either real estate or your specific specialty? Because we're going to talk about cost segregation. Obviously, you are the cost seg king. So, but how did you get into the space? And just give me a little background.
Sure. I was a teacher for many years, so my passion has always been teaching, and I still is. I'm a father, I have 6 kids, and so it really just comes with the territory. But so I was a teacher for about 15 years, like I said, and at a certain point, it just didn't make sense anymore financially to continue down that path. With a growing family, I just needed to find something else, either to do simultaneously or just kind of switch out of it. And I just put it out there in the world. I put it out there, as people say, in the universe, and ask God, for guidance, and ask my friends. And that's literally what I did. I just asked a bunch of friends who were successful in business and said, what do you have an idea? Like, I'm not really interested in going back to school for like additional, higher education, anything like that. Like, what kind of field can I move into that does not require any sort of formal education and yet has the potential for like basically no ceiling, like no cap on potential? And real estate, various things in real estate kept coming back to me as suggestions. And then I just met a friend of mine randomly. I mean, nothing's random, but in the parking lot one day. And I told him, I'm looking for opportunities. What do you have in mind? And he started talking about commercial real estate. And he was a mortgage broker. He owned some multifamily properties that he and his family had owned for many years. He did property management on them and had a lot of experience in real estate and various things. And just started talking about stuff. I'm like, I have no idea what you're talking about, like cap rates and, LTVs and all these acronyms just like thrown at me. If you'd like to just kind of, sit with me in my office, I can just kind of show you the ropes. And that's what I did. I literally just went for like 3-4 days a week and would just sit with him in his office and just start doing whatever he was doing. And I learned, like literally for about a 7-8 month period, I just learned everything there was to know about commercial real estate. And that to me was my entering into the real estate world. It was doing cold calls, reaching out to banks. We were doing financing, hard money loans. We were doing all kinds of stuff. And then we transitioned to doing some fix and flips together. It really covered a lot of stuff. So that was my transition into it. A couple years down the road, I was still looking for opportunities because it was great. I was learning a lot, not making a tremendous amount of money. As anyone who's a mortgage broker knows, it takes a long time to really kind of fill that pipeline, service people. And then just another opportunity came my way with this company, Madison Commercial Real Estate, Madison SPECS, which is the largest national cost segregation company. And I was made an introduction to them. They were looking to hire someone in business development. I was like, I don't know really much about this. I don't have a background in taxes, nothing. Like, no, don't worry. You're a teacher. I think it's going to do you very well. And really it has. And it's been a blessing. So that's about 5.5 years already doing that, and quickly became like the industry expert, just because I have this almost superpower of taking complex concepts and explaining them, pretty simply. So, anyone can understand them. And cost segregation is this subject that's just clouded in so much, mystique that, well, I don't understand it. It's taxes. And when you hear taxes, most people's like brains shut off. I don't know what you're talking about. And that's what I found. And most people had even successful real estate investors had no idea what cost segregation was. And I found myself literally just educating people, just talking and going on podcasts and doing webinars and just sharing the knowledge of what it is. And once you know what it is, it's essentially a no-brainer to use.
Yeah. So on that point, there's a lot of things in here that I could go back to. But since you hit on that, like, what is your elevator pitch on a cost seg? Like, what is this thing?
It's a tax deduction for anyone who owns real estate. Besides for your primary residence, you can take a depreciation deduction, which is a small amount every single year, or you can do this cost segregation thing and accelerate those deductions and allow you to take larger deductions in the earlier years of ownership. So essentially, it's a cash flow mechanism that allows you to have more money to invest.
Beautifully stated. I love it. So we're going to get into that in a second. We'll dive deeper into the cost seg and everything. I have a bunch of questions about it just for my own benefit and listeners' benefit. So you've got 6 kids and you are like a beast on content production. Like, you're out there all the time. And so, like, how do you find the time, like, just as a businessman? And to even step back from that, I wouldn't see you in any other role. Just having seen you post and see what you do, I could peg you for a biz dev guy from like a mile away, just like having conversations, teaching people and doing what you do. So do you feel like you found your role, like your calling? Like, is this your deal? Or in the sense of being able to teach while working and earning at the same time, you're still kind of in that realm.
Yeah, it's a great balance, to be honest. It really does fill a lot of my natural strengths. And so I've found ways, and I've learned a tremendous amount along the way about how to get better and how to create content and stuff like that. But it's just been, just bringing out those natural tendencies of mine, those natural ways to do it. And yeah, I definitely love it. I don't know if I would say I've found my calling per se. Is this the end goal? I've continued to, over the years, invest in real estate, mostly passively, but now I'm actually very interested in transitioning into a more active role side of things. So will I be doing the cost segregation thing forever? Probably not, but it's incredible to just be able to help people all day long.
Yeah, for sure. And so, yeah, the other side of that question, or the first part was, like, where do you find the time? Like, how do you manage this machine you've got going on the content production plus 6 kids? I have 2, and that is a handful, but kudos to you, man. Yeah. How do you find the time?
So first of all, my wife is incredible. She's amazing. So that's obviously a huge blessing. My kids are a little bit older. My youngest is 8 now. So kind of out of the baby, infant, toddler stage, which definitely occupies a lot more time and energy for most parents. And it's really just a balance, obviously no sleep. So that's the easy way to do it. No, I'm just kidding. But, finding the time to focus on whenever you're doing what you're doing, just be totally focused on that. So when I'm with the kids, when I'm with my family, make sure to take time out, spend the weekend, spend the time with them, totally unplugged from everything else. It's the quality that matters, right? So yeah, I'm not going to be spending like all day with my kids, right? They're in school, so I'm able to work. It's a good balance. I think it's a healthy balance. But the truth of the matter is, people don't realize how much impact you can have online, especially with social media, by just putting in consistent effort. It doesn't have to be a huge amount of time per se, but just being consistent and being there. People keep seeing you over and over and over again. The branding just shines through.
Yeah, for sure. And so I want to ask you about that, because I did that challenge that you had and I did not do it well. It was very difficult for me to post every day. Like I'm not a huge fan of social media in general, just getting on and doing like self-promo. It's difficult for me to do. But one thing that I love about how you have operated it is the like value first. And so how do you determine if you're adding value or not prior to posting something, right? Like instead of having it be like do you have some kind of bar, or this is just like comes natural to you? You're like, yeah, I know this is going to be adding value to somebody.
Yeah, at this point, it does come a lot more naturally. I would say it is a delicate balance. I do very little self-promo. And if there is any even hint of self-promo, it's coming with 100 scoops of value add along with it. And that's really important. So I would say for anyone who's interested in learning more on this subject and how to do it, Gary Vaynerchuk is like the guru of this topic of just adding massive value along with education, along with, providing a service or a product, whatever it is in business, using social media to add value. And that's really where I've learned a lot of this from. So check out, he's got, a ton of content out there, several books on the subject, including Jab, 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 Right Hook, which is a great, really just the premise is just add value, then ask, right? But never ask for anything until you've already just given tremendous, much more value. And introduction to that book, actually, at least in the audio book that I listened to, he says that he originally wanted to call it jab, 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 like right hook, 20 times, and the editors would not let him do that. That's the premise. Just add massive value before ever asking for anything.
Yeah, that's solid. I mean, so obviously we have a lot of realtors and agents and that sort listen to the show, and so everyone that is an agent that I know is always trying to promote on social media in some form or fashion, always doing something. Hey, look at this house I listed. Hey, look at me. Look at this is what I did.
Right.
And so that advice, I think, is key, especially if you're trying to add value. Yeah,
it is. And I would say there's such an opportunity out there to become an expert in your niche, whatever your niche is, right? So if you're a realtor, if you're an agent, and you're selling, investment sales, whatever it is, you're focusing on a property, become the expert in your market, in your town, in your city, in that specific asset class, whatever it is, something about it. And then people will, and talk about that more. Obviously, everyone will see, your name and your tagline or whatever it is that you're a realtor. And the more you talk about things that are not real estate, necessarily specifically about, self-promoting, I'm selling this house, come tour this house, most people tune that out. But when you become the expert and you're I'm in I don't know, I'm in San Antonio, right? That's where you are. I'm in San Antonio, like, here is the demographics of things happening. Here are, do some content about jobs coming to the market, do some content about, places to see, do content about, things happening in the community. People see that you're adding value, and everyone automatically sees you as the realtor or as the person who is, the broker, whatever it is. It comes automatic. Think about any brand that they're not necessarily telling you all the time to buy their product. They're just in front of your face all the time, and you automatically make that correlation between who they are and what they sell or what they do. So again, that's the key to social media and to branding, is don't talk about the thing that you do all the time. Think about it. I mean, yes, here we're on the podcast, we're going to talk about cost segregation a little bit, but if you go to my social media feeds, you'll see I talk about cost segregation maybe 10% of the time, if that. But everyone sees my name as the cost segregation expert, and so they automatically make that connection, who to go to when they need it.
This show is sponsored by Ridgeline Investment Group. Ridgeline has a track record of transacting more than $53 million in assets throughout Texas. Ridgeline is currently looking to acquire 100 to 200 unit Class B multifamily communities between 5 and 20 million in San Antonio, Temple, Waco, Tyler, and other secondary markets in Texas. To learn more about Ridgeline Investment Group, visit www.ridgelineig.com. Yeah, I love your hashtag Weiss Advice. I'm on there on social media, and I'm like, okay, cool. I got to come up with one. Hashtag McNuggets. So I'm like, I got McCleared, and I've got some nuggets I'm dropping, McNuggets. I'm like, all right, maybe that'll work. Maybe something else. I don't know. But it's good, man. I like all of the stuff that you're putting out. So let's actually jump into some cost segregation. You kind of gave us a high level of what it is. What should limited partners know? Because the whole idea is that we're investing our active income into these passive investments with sponsors like myself and others who are buying these multifamily communities. What should I know as an investor, limited partner coming into those deals, about a cost segregation specifically on a deal?
Sure. So, I mean, specifically on a deal, a cost segregation is going to create more tax deductions upfront, which is going to essentially make sure that all of the income that you're getting from the investment is, at least during the first 5 years of ownership, basically tax-free. And there's almost no other source of income out there where you can make money and also not be taxed on it. And so that's why cost segregation is so powerful. But what's even more powerful about it, especially for a passive investor who is also a real estate professional, is that you can use any of those extra deductions beyond the income from the actual properties or investments. Those extra deductions can be used to offset your active income. Okay, so this is essentially the biggest secret to how wealthy, in people in real estate, because they're using this specific rule in the tax code of the real estate professional. So again, if you are a real estate professional, meaning you're a broker, you automatically are able to use, as long as you have to have actually materially participate in some sort of rental. So you have to actually own at least one rental property or invest in something and materially participate in it. But once you do that, you hit that hurdle, you're now able to claim all those deductions, those losses against your active income, which a normal W-2 person who's not a real estate professional would not be able to do.
Yeah. It's like a portion of it on, talk to your CPA about that. But yeah, it's like you can take a portion of it, but not all of it. Yeah. So let's see, again, as a real estate professional, if I go and I invest in a deal and say I invest $100,000, do you have an idea of what that equates to? Or is that, obviously it's a deal by deal basis, right? But could I expect to get a $50,000 reduction in my adjusted gross income? Or is there some number in there that I could say, this is what I should be getting at least?
So it is on a deal by deal basis. There's no real flat rule. If you invest X amount of money, you're going to get X amount back. Every single deal is going to be different. Every property is different. And whether they use cost segregation or not, obviously, in the bonus depreciation rules, there's a lot that goes into it. But one thing that I can say is that most operators or most syndicators who do get a cost segregation study done upfront, even before the investment period, even while they're under contract, will get an analysis completed, which will tell you approximately what the potential tax savings would be by doing a cost segregation study. And therefore, what that, the total depreciation amount that you're going to be, those deductions, you're going to spread to your investors according to their percentage of ownership. That's an easy calculation to make once we're going to have X amount of equity. And so per $100,000 investment, you're going to get back that. So there isn't a necessarily like golden rule or rule of thumb in general, but there is, on specific properties, you can know ahead of time.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Solid. And so then when would you say it's appropriate to do a cost segregation? Like a type of asset perhaps, or asset class, like multifamily, it seems like a given you want to do it, but when would you not want to do a cost segregation, I guess?
Almost every type of property you can get a cost segregation done on. So pretty much anything, whether there's a single family, a commercial property, retail, office, industrial, storage, you name it, anything can have a cost segregation done on it. I'd say the biggest factor is the purchase price, meaning the benefit is going to be proportional to the purchase price. So let's say you buy $1 million property, you may be looking at, $100,000 to $200,000 of tax savings if you do a cost segregation study. But if you buy a $100,000 property, right, and maybe, a percentage of that, which might be, $10,000 to $20,000. So to pay a few $1,000s to get this cost segregation study done, which is minimally what it usually costs, starts to make a lot more sense the higher the property value goes. So my rule of thumb is generally anything over $500,000 purchase price, usually a no-brainer for any type of property. There are certain types of properties that even a smaller amount may make sense because they're going to have more tax benefits from the depreciation. So like an Airbnb, for example, a short-term rental, usually has a lot more amenities, a lot more furnishings, which are those things that can be, the depreciation accelerated. That's what we do with the cost segregation.
Okay. And is there a timeline that you have to have a cost seg ordered after purchase, after you close?
There is not. You can actually do it at any time, at any point in time whatsoever. So even if you've owned a property for a number of years and been depreciating it just on a regular straight line method, you can go back and get a cost seg done without actually amending your tax returns. Just do it, catch up that depreciation and then use that going forward. Most people do like to get it done in the first year of ownership. So, if you do that, you just need to make sure that you have the cost seg completed before you file taxes on that first year.
Yeah. Okay. And then, so you mentioned kind of the cost on these things, a couple thousand up to, I don't know, if it's a $20 million complex, is that like in the tens of thousands, or are we still sub $10,000?
Yeah, still sub 10 because it's not contingent on the property cost or the tax savings. It's usually a flat fee. And so for multifamily properties, we generally charge, somewhere around like, $4,000 to $6,000 or something. That's, currently at the time of this recording, I got burned on that once a couple years ago. I was talking, we had like a special price for like short-term rentals for like single families. What we were doing for like a short period of time, a few years ago for like $1,500. And like, I recorded a podcast with someone and then I kept getting people reaching out to me from that podcast. It was like one of the most popular podcasts I ever did. And I kept on telling people, a year, 2 years later, we actually raised the fee. So I'm going to say at the time of this recording, right? Maybe like $5,000. So yeah.
Yeah, something like that. Okay. So yeah, it doesn't make much sense then to do it on a lower priced property, obviously. So, okay. So we've got a cost seg. So one of the questions I've always had about this, I throw $100,000 into a deal, right? I'm sitting here on the sideline. We do a cost seg on it. I get this big depreciation check, like savings on my end, say, 50 to 80,000, whatever it is. I'm like, yeah, look at me go. And then the property sells. So what happens at that point? Do I have to pay some of that back? What does that look like?
Sure. So anytime you sell a property or a property sells, there's something called depreciation recapture tax. Okay. So it's considered like a capital gain because you've been given this deduction. And if you used it, you're going to be subject to a tax on that amount of those depreciation deductions that you used. If you didn't use it and they're just suspended losses, which is very often, like, let's say, keep your example, like you put $100,000 in and you get like a $50,000 deduction, but your income from the property is only like $10,000, right? So you have these extra deductions that are considered passive losses, and those carry forward, and those are on basically an imaginary bank account on your tax return, like year after year until they get used up. But oftentimes when a cost seg is done, you'll have, again, unless you're a real estate professional and using that against your active income, you'll have, a big amount of these extra losses. And similarly, if you invest in multiple deals, all of those properties get grouped together and lumped together on your tax return. And so all of the income from your rentals and your investments and all of the depreciation are all lumped together. So you may have enough losses or depreciation deductions from one property to offset that passive gain from the sale of another property. So it is important to know that you do have this recapture tax. It doesn't mean exchange it for another property, deferring those, or actually offsetting those taxes from the passive losses from another investment. And so it's really a cycle that you can continue forever, essentially.
Yeah. Okay. So it shows up, the recapture would show up as almost like an increase in my adjusted gross income type deal, or somewhere on your taxes where you have to.
It would be like a gain, like a capital gain. Exactly. An unrealized gain, it's called. Okay.
And so you're just on low end properties. That's really the only time you would avoid actually doing a cost seg. So
that's one time. I would say one other case, which is fairly common, is where people are investing through their retirement accounts. And so by investing through a retirement account, most retirement accounts, and there are some exceptions, are kind of tax shelters. And therefore, if people invest in a syndication, if there are enough people investing through that, then you cannot benefit from the depreciation. So it doesn't really make sense to get a cost segregation done if, let's say, a majority of the investors are coming through that route.
Okay. That would be if you are investing through your self-directed IRA or something like that, right? Is that what you're talking about? Yeah.
That's what I'm talking about. Yeah. Self-directed IRA or a solo 401k, something like that.
Yeah. So if you are investing through that, you can still invest in a deal that does a cost segregation, but you don't necessarily need to take those losses, correct? Do you have the option, a solo investor in the deal, to not take the losses?
No, unfortunately, unless it is set up that way in the operating agreement from the beginning, and you kind of separate out different classes of investors some are going to be receiving the benefits, some are not. You can't just decide, oh, I'm not going to take that, or I'm not going to, I'll give that to someone else. So it is something that can be set up, but it needs to be done from the beginning.
Yeah. So you'd need to know the investor base fairly well ahead of time.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. I've seen that done where, you maybe have two different classes of investors or something, and one class of investors are coming through their self-directed retirement accounts and are not going to get the depreciation allocated to them. They're going to get, something else maybe in return for that, maybe a higher percentage or a higher, preferred return or whatever that is. And the other investor class would get the tax benefits, adjusted, whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. That makes sense. So you talked about wanting to get more on the active side of things. So like right now, what are you seeing in the market? And if you were to jump in today, what asset class are you looking at?
I've invested in the past in a lot of different asset classes. So from, single families to multifamily, self-storage, RV parks, mobile home parks. And so I've kind of covered a lot of those bases. I've learned a tremendous amount about them. It's really hard to know what's going to be doing, continue to do well over the next foreseeable future. There's still a lot of uncertainty right now. One thing that I do say is, obviously partner with operators that have been doing it for a long time. They know they've gone through downturns before. They know how to weather the storm. And so that for me is the most important aspect of investing. And so partnering up with people, doing it on my own, I do not intend to ever do, but partnering up with other successful people who have much more experience than me, that's something that I'm planning to do. So one asset class I'm very favorable of is the RV parks are great, but mobile home parks, manufactured housing communities, whatever you want to call it, affordable housing. It's an asset class that has had, great increase in rents. It's still recession, meaning it's still extremely affordable in most communities. And even if you're in a very, a big MSA, a big market, you may have, mobile home parks that are there that are, pretty comparable, just affordable housing. They don't have to be the infamous kind of trailer parks that are, no one would step foot in type of thing. There are a lot of places, communities that are really newly built, very, very nice and great options for people who just can't afford to buy a house, but they can afford to buy a mobile home, which, can be 1,000 square feet and can be great for a couple or, a single family or whatever it is.
Yeah.
It's a lot of great. So that's one asset class that I'm very bullish on.
Yeah. I was looking at a property here in San Antonio. It was like a 80 unit deal. And so driving comps, I start driving around and there was a mobile home park right behind it. And so I drive in, start looking at it, and the rents were lower. They get a full house to themselves. They get a yard. They get all these things. And I was just like, I can't buy this complex when this thing is here. And it was super nice. Everything about it was super nice. They had a pool. They had all kinds of amenities and things. And so, and for a long time, I've liked that asset class. We were looking at doing some land development deals where we would just actually build our own and actually have the lots that we would own and just rent the lots out. So on that front, have you Yeah. Would you rent the lots, or would you do lot rent and own the actual, own the mobile home as well? Or would you just rent the lots?
On a deal by deal basis, it really does make a difference. But the most popular way to do mobile home parks, and the operators that I know that I would partner up with, do it on where they're just renting the lots. That's the best way to do it, where you can actually give opportunities for people to own their homes. Also, they own their own homes. You're renting the lots, but the cash flow is much, much better. It's much stable, and it's a much longer tenant. If you think about it in terms of, you don't have the type of turnover that multifamily has also. So it's another huge benefit to mobile home parks.
You can sell the notes even on those things. So what bright spots are you looking at here in 2023? What do you got? What are you looking up for here?
The bright spots, the things that I look out for are things that are universal and never change, and things that do not make a difference what's going on in the economy or in the market. And that's, what you can do to help other people. And the more you have, the more abundance mindset that you have, the more you can actually accomplish more. That's a really, really hard thing for people who are kind of starting out in the business or starting out in real estate, or as a realtor, to kind of think, oh, I should go out of my way to help someone else. I should go out of my way to, kind of share the commission on this deal with someone else. The more you put out there in the world to help other people, the more it's going to come back to you tenfold.
Love it. Good advice. 2023. Do it.
Always.
Always. Yeah. Yeah. All right. Well, look, I love catching up. It was good to get to know you. I'll finish with some questions not related to real estate as well. So, what is your favorite pastime not related to real estate?
Well, with 6 kids, there's not too many pastimes that I still have, but
jumping place,
one thing I do enjoy, my kids love to do also, is rollerblading. I used to play hockey a little bit, and so my kids love getting on the skates. And so, that's one thing I enjoy doing.
Yeah, that's good. So blading, where are you located?
So now I'm actually in Israel. So that's, so there's not much ice out here.
No.
There are a couple rinks, but too far from where I live.
Yeah. We were supposed to go last year, and we may go soon. If we're there, we'll have to hit you up, come hang out.
Yeah. Go to the skate park.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it's been a long time. I used to play, a buddy of mine played ice hockey in high school, and so he got me on some skates, and we used to go out and blade and do, a bunch of stuff. It was fun. It's been a long time. What's the best thing or memory that's happened to you and your family in the last 60 days or so in recent memory?
Best thing that's happened in recent memory. Well, just spending time. I think we had a few weeks ago, we had some time off, winter break. So just spending time together with the family. We actually went on a little trip together. It was great. Just rented an Airbnb, hung out. It was a lot of fun just spending quality time together.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. All right. And then name one or two people who've been most influential in your success or the way you think.
So I already mentioned Gary Vee earlier in terms of the marketing side of things. It really has influenced me tremendously. Another person who I've learned from a lot is actually the president of the company I work for, Madison SPECS, Madison Commercial Real Estate Services. His name's Joseph Rosenbaum. He's an incredible, business person. Been doing real estate, for 30 years. And I've just learned a huge amount from him about not just how to run a business, but also in terms of giving. And that's something I've learned from. Yeah.
Well, so what's your favorite way to give back? It's not a question I normally ask, but we've talked about it a bunch here.
Sure. My favorite way is, finding people in my community that are struggling and just finding ways to discreetly help them without them actually knowing. It's a great way to do it. I highly suggest it. If you know someone that's struggling, if you've been there, and I've been there, I've been in my life at certain points where, in debt and, literally didn't know where I was going to buy, bread, literally didn't know where I was going to pay rent that month, is things like that. So I know what it's like to be there. And when you know that, it's easy to kind of see that, or maybe not for some people, maybe it's not easy, but to me, I really enjoy helping people without them actually knowing that I'm the one that's helping them. And so they can benefit from it. They don't feel embarrassed to know, that, oh, this person helped me, and therefore I owe them something or whatever, or feel embarrassed to get, which a lot of people do. And so if you can find ways to kind of discreetly do it, that's something I love doing.
Man, I love that. So good catching up. I love the persona, the way you carry yourself. So thanks again for jumping on. I know that everybody got a ton of advice from you, and we're going to have links to your contact. Yonah has an awesome podcast. It's Weiss Advice. Check it out. He's got a ton of people on there. And yeah, so if they want to reach out to you, I'll give them a link that you've already given me. So, all right, guys, thanks.
Surprisingly, most of the agents we speak with got into real estate hoping to gain passive income and become work optional. However, only 1 in 5 ever start investing. Most are simply too afraid to start. Once you get educated by listening to this show, you'll be able to overcome that fear and become the 1 in 5 who are finding financial freedom. Don't miss a single episode. If you want to stay up to date, the best way is to make sure you're subscribed. So if you haven't done that, go ahead and do it now. And we'll catch you on the next episode.